Hello and welcome to the Marketing Practice Podcast Tenure Out Alumni Series.
Tune in over the next 3 weeks as we bring you interviews from the alumni of 2011.
Find out where they are today, how the MDP has helped them in their career to date, and some of their fondest memories from their time on the MDP.
If you're interested in finding out more about the MDP, check us out on social media.
If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd really appreciate it if you shared this with your friends who might be interested in finding out about life on the MDP.
Today's guest is a former MDP, Devlin, who graduated from the MDP in 2011 and is currently working at Google as a strategic accounts lead on the Google High Performance Agency team. So welcome, Diana. Thank you so much for coming to speak with us today. First of all, we were just wondering if you could tell us a small bit about yourself and what your current role entails.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having me. My name's Diana Devlin. Originally from Rathgar in Dublin, born and bred Dubliner. Currently in New York. I'm in Williamsburg in Brooklyn here, where I have been for the last year and a half during COVID. So moved over to New York with Google about 4 years ago. And yeah, I've been loving it. My current role, I'm strategic accounts lead, as you mentioned. So what that means is that I work on the sales side at Google. So Google overall is kind of, engineering and sales are probably the two biggest components. So in terms of the sales side, I manage a team of account strategists. So it's sales team focused on agency sales. So those account strategists support client business at agencies. So basically, advertisers on Google across Google search, display, and video on YouTube. So a bit about myself. That's kind of my current role. As I mentioned, I'm from Rathgar, went to Alex in Milltown. Then I went on and did my undergrad in Trinity. Then I went on to the MDP a decade now ago, which is crazy. And then after that went into agency side, into a media agency in Dublin before joining Google Dublin, and then obviously transferred over to New York, where I am currently with Google then.
Okay, amazing. And obviously Google it's such a big company, and I think a lot of people do aspire to one day work in a company like Google. Was Google always on your mind? Did you always kind of know that one day you would love to work in that company, or was it something that the opportunity just arose and you just decided to take it?
A bit of both. So I think when I think back to being in school, all I knew kind of when I was doing my leaving cert was that I wanted to work in advertising. Didn't even know really how to get into advertising. It's not like a clear path law or architecture or other things. So I was really interested in art and design back in school. My dad's an architect, so that probably had something to do with it. And went on to study sociology and the history of art in Trinity, so an arts degree. And then when I graduated, it was in the middle of a recession back in 2009, 2010 time. So I had no practical work experience, and I knew I kind of needed to specialize with a business qualification. So once I got in, when I was in the MDP, then at the end of the year, a lot of people were going down kind of the brand management route, whereas I knew I still wanted to kind of get into advertising and go down client services. So the MDP was great as, a broad kind of marketing qualification and gave me the practical experience that I wanted. So ended up media agency side versus creative, which I think I'd originally been interested in. And I think everything happens for a reason, because I couldn't think of, I couldn't think of being on the creative side now. I've loved media from day one. So then when I was in MediaWorks, definitely Google and Facebook as the big tech firms, I was managing digital campaigns and had a huge passion for that. So it was definitely on my radar, but I think I actually thought I'd go client side for a stint before kind of, making my way into a tech firm. But then a Google recruiter reached out, the opportunity presented itself, and haven't looked back since.
Oh my God, amazing. So you kind of right place, right time almost.
Exactly, yeah.
So how do you think the MDP has contributed to your career to date then?
I think it was really pivotal, to be honest, because I graduated in the middle of a recession with an arts degree and no practical experience because I'd spent all my summers traveling around like Southeast Asia and Central America and stuff, which have absolutely no regrets about. And would definitely recommend. But I knew I needed like a master's qualification. Like the MDP was one of the few that accepted undergraduates that didn't have a business degree. And I think it was really pivotal because it gave me both that practical work experience, it gave me the broad marketing qualification. It also gave me a great like Irish network of, like professionals like in the same industry that, I'm still super close to. And I don't think that can be underestimated. When I was leaving Trinity, I also applied for the London School of Economics and was accepted into a master's there on like society and culture. But I think, it's funny thinking back on that because, London would have been a great experience and LSE is also a great school, but it would have been going down a very academic route. Whereas I think like, starting with the MDP, like the network, how well respected it is and going down that commercial route really set me up for success in terms of getting me my first job, like building that experience and then subsequently, getting into Google and being able to kind of take my career to New York and so on.
Amazing. One thing that you kind of mentioned there a couple of times, and I wanted to pick up on, you were talking about how you were coming out into a recession. Now, I think us in the MDP currently, we're coming into, well, it may not be a recession. There's a lot of talk of it, and we've quite maybe a condensed jobs market than would traditionally be there kind of at this time of the year. Would you have any advice for kind of us in MDPs who are kind of maybe coming out into the jobs market now in that kind of maybe depressed kind of a jobs market?
That's a really good question. I think there's probably a few things. I think like one of the things I was mindful of, it was trying to keep my experience kind of as broad as possible at the start. So, like I mentioned, I was interested in like getting into advertising, but like the MDP was great in terms of being a little bit broader, in relation to kind of like marketing overall. So that was one thing, because I kind of figured it would be, broader experience and more employable on the other end. And I had the same mentality in terms of leaving the MDP. When I was lucky enough to have a few different job offers on the table and subsequently, chose to go down kind of like the MediaWorks and media planning route, because I felt like that would give me the broadest amount of experience starting off. And I think overall, like, things have changed hugely, over the last like 18 months. So I think just like keeping at the forefront of like, like what's happening in the industry, and kind of following your gut in terms of what interests you the most, you'll end up in the right place.
Okay.
Hopefully. And what was your favorite moment or like fondest memory from the MDP then?
Oh my God, there's so many to choose from, like so many good memories. It's crazy that it's only a year because, I feel like there's like so many memories that like, it's so hard to choose from any, but it's an intense year. Like it's definitely like, I don't know if it's still this way, but it was definitely like work hard, play hard when I was there. And I think the hard work, bonds everyone so quickly. You really like, make the best of pals. Like I'm still super close with, a lot of my friends back from the MDP days 10 years ago. We've been through a lot in our 20s and now our 30s and, been at each other's weddings, and now people are starting families. So that's really nice. And I know we'll be friends for life, but yeah, it's an intense year. It's work hard, it's play hard. And there's so many good memories that I can think of. I can't really pick like one highlight, but I think probably just the friendships that were formed out of that have stood to us today, I think is probably the main highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it certainly still is work hard. I think COVID has presented a lot of the play hard element of it, unfortunately, but I'm sure we'll make up for that in the coming months. When
you'll have lots of making up to do for that.
we do indeed. Yeah, absolutely. So you're living in New York currently. That's pretty cool. And I know a lot of even just chatting amongst ourselves in the course, like a lot of us really do aspire to one day maybe move abroad and kind of travel with marketing. What would you kind of say to someone who has that ambition to get out and get abroad and travel with the degree they get from the MDP?
I like 100% do it. I think it's so good. Like, it's something I would definitely recommend. And it was something like I had to do personally. I'd been in Dublin, I'd gone to Trinity. I then chose not to go to London and do my master's in Smurfit. And then started working, and then all of a sudden I was like, whoa, hang on a second, there's like so many years have gone past here, and I knew I wanted to do a stint abroad. So I think it's definitely something I'd recommend just in terms of like overall life experience. And I think it's also something that I'd recommend in terms like professionally. Like, it's really great to have like market diversification. When I was working in Google Dublin, I was focused on the UK market for like finance. So I was in large customer sales in Google Dublin, focused on finance, and then media and entertainment and telco. And then I actually moved over to New York in kind of like the telco vertical, focused then on the US market and AT&T over here. And then got back to my agency roots, following kind of like my agency MediaWorks days in Dublin, moved to our Google Customer Solutions team to support agencies specifically. But I think it's great to have the market diversification. And I think if I look forward in my own career, like, I'd love to do a stint, in like the Asia Pacific APAC region at some point as well.
And do you find that marketing changes as you kind of move country? Like, do you have to learn like a whole new skill set? Do you have to embed yourself in the culture more? Like, how does it kind of change as you move from place to place?
I think in terms of like market experience, like, I think it just again broadens kind of like experience that you have, like, knowing different markets and how they operate, because there's nuances in each of them. But I think probably there are also like work culture differs, like definitely like the pace of work in New York differs from different offices, like what I experienced in Dublin and so on as well. So that's kind of interesting. That's probably like the life side. But if I think back to my cohort in the MDP, like everyone like got around in their 20s. There was people all over the globe. Like, there's people who are still in Australia who've settled there, married with like kids. I know the Jemison program was great. That was like a big one for people who wanted to travel straight away. People ended up in like Stockholm, Texas, Singapore, Miami, Jamaica, Canada. So like everyone's, and a lot of people have come back. Like London as well was a big one. A lot of people have come back to Dublin, but it's great. Like, like the network really spreads after the year, and like I met up with MDPers all over the globe, and it's definitely something I'd recommend doing.
Okay. And in terms of then, like, getting your first, sorry, I'm asking lots of questions now.
No, go for it.
I might be one of those people who aspires to go abroad one day, but like,
we both are. We're dying to go.
I think it's like what we're noticing is it's like getting jobs, especially at the moment, it seems to be like heavily reliant on connections and kind of getting ins in companies. Yeah. What would you give advice to someone maybe who mightn't have an in a place? Is there ways around that of just kind of maybe sending in applications, or how would you kind of recommend that you get that job abroad?
Yeah, totally. I think don't be shy. Like, your careers are what you make of them, and like you guys are in the driving seat, and no one cares more about your career than yourself. So I think like don't be shy. You'd actually be surprised. Like, the majority of people are like super happy to help. They've been there before, and whether it's just like having a chat about what a role is, or referring people into different companies or whatever it might be. I think the majority of people are like super willing to help. So I would say just don't be shy, and like just ask away in terms of kind of like the help that you need, and you'll find, I think, that people are more than willing to help.
Amazing.
Just have to keep going and asking.
Totally. I think like one of the things for me in terms of like New York and the US specifically, like the US, it can be a little bit trickier in terms of like work authorization and immigration, especially over the last few years with the prior administration here.
Yeah.
And I think like that's one of the benefits of the big multinational companies, so I can't even remember when I decided I wanted to move to New York. A lot of pals moved to London. I knew I wanted kind of like, the different market experience, as I mentioned. And, a big multinational like Google definitely makes it easier to, transfer internally and move versus, smaller kind of like independent firms and so on. So that's kind of something to think about that I feel like I definitely wasn't really told when I was like leaving school and college and all of that.
Yeah.
So in terms of then like going out into the working world and trying to get that experience, you'd recommend trying to get into one of these big companies, like better opportunities in that?
I think I think there's like pros to both. Like to be honest, like I wouldn't have got into Google probably without the experience that I got agency side in a smaller firm in Dublin. Like that gave me such a broad education in like media, in marketing, like practical experience in terms of like relationship management, client services, like end-to-end media planning, like advertising.
Yeah.
I still look back on my agency days like super fondly, and to be honest, I could have stayed there for another decade. I loved it so much.
Yeah.
So I think like I wouldn't recommend one over the other by any means, but I think specifically if you're like hoping to kind of like do a lot of international transfers over your career, like the big multinationals can make that a little bit easier just in terms of transferring office locations and work authorization support and things like that.
Okay, brilliant. And then what would you say is your biggest highlight in your career to date, Diana?
My biggest highlight. Well, the 10 years has gone by very quickly. It doesn't feel like that at all. I think I can't really pick like one. I think there's probably been like really important moments where I was like, oh, this is like a bit of a game changer. Like this is going to take me to the next step. Like, like definitely getting into the MDP was a big deal. Like I didn't have a business background. I knew that was the direction that I wanted to go in. Like I knew I wanted to go down a commercial route. Like that was definitely a highlight. I still remember my now husband, picking me up the days of my interview. Like getting my first job, like being made permanent, like, I'll be forever grateful for that and all of the experience that it gave me in MediaWorks. Then getting into Google, I knew that was, like a great company to work for. I knew it was going to allow me to do kind of like the international, travel that I wanted to with work. And then, it's always nice, like you'll look back in 10 years and you'll have like so many moments and things to have celebrated in terms of like promotions and, like things like that in different roles and different experiences that you get and all the fun that comes along with it. But I think probably more recently, being made a people manager at Google, on the sales side, moving to be responsible for leading a team versus, just my own kind of like sales performance. That's definitely been a more recent highlight.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems like you've had quite an interesting career over your last 10 years. But look, thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us today. That is unfortunately all we have time for. Jan, I really, really appreciate your time and just to hear about, I suppose, how you've progressed on past the MDP. It's always great for like myself and Sarah to hear about it. And the rest of the course, we're definitely going to be listening to this as well. So thanks very much.
Thanks
and
so much.
Wishing you all the best over the next few years.
Thanks so much for having me, and best of luck. You guys are at like an unbelievable stage in your lives, and just about to embark on your careers. So enjoy every minute of the year in the MDP. It'll be over before you know it, and you'll have blinked and 10 years will have gone past. But yeah, best of luck to you all, and if there's anything I can ever do, don't hesitate to reach out.